Hello, very beautiful community. Our second time together talking about the Russian drone incursion into Poland now that we know a bit more. The first time I shared a thought with you in the middle of the night when the news just came out, I talked about disinhibition. So, just to remind ourselves of what that's about. If this is a provocation by the Russians, and this is going to be my assumption, as opposed to an accident or a detour to get back into Ukraine, then what we're talking about is an aim for a disinhibiting effect of normalizing for the West the idea that the Russians can mess with the security of Eastern Europe, that the Russians can mess with Western alliance commitments, so long as they're doing that in Eastern Europe and not touching the West. So it's not that an event like this normalizes the idea of Russia genuinely doing a low threshold challenge to Article 5 in Finland or in the Baltics, but it takes us half an inch toward the normalization of such an outcome. And this sort of process of disinhibition, states doing provocative things as the world order unravels, is self-perpetuating. The more stuff like this happens, the more Russia's invasion of Ukraine or the Chinese invasion of Taiwan might look relatively normal. So there's a very real problem there, that with a broken global order, states begin to act as though there is nothing at all on the table except might is right. But in acting like that, they make it even more true that there genuinely is nothing more on the table than might is right. But now I think it's important to introduce a couple of more bits of analysis. I think one has to be about hybrid war, and the other is about the paradox of Western response to something like this. So, as a political philosopher, I can tell you that hybrid war, doing something that kind of seems like it might be something, but it isn't quite that, although it maybe is a little bit. Hybrid war and democracy sit very badly together. It's extremely difficult for democratic citizens to realize that a war is going on unless it is a textbook 2 + 2 = 4 kind of war. And that was an element of Ukraine's tragedy in 2014. It wasn't clear that anything that much was happening, right? Even though a plane had been taken out of the sky, even though a large piece of sovereign territory had been confiscated, it kind of looks like not much has happened. And if you're too obsessed about it, you're just overly fetishizing the principle of sovereignty. There's no real war going on. So what's challenging is that it's possible to push the bracket of hybrid aggression against the West really quite far without democratic citizens waking up and recognizing and being able to categorize what is happening. And it's difficult for us because, of course, Mr. Putin is going to use that against us very effectively. So that's one of the challenges here. Hybrid war is very, very difficult to act against concertedly and to mobilize your democratic citizenries around. Well, given that, what can the West do? And the problem is that there's a kind of a paradox here. Because the West does not have a strategy toward the war in Ukraine, it's not possible to ask the West to do a lot in response to this without asking the West to have a strategy, which it arguably can't have because it's too democratically fragile at home. And so there are a lot of people ventilating that there is a need for a strong response, but I don't recognize the possibility for a strong response unless you develop a strategy to figure out what it is that you're trying to do in a particular region of the world, in this case, your own region, and what exactly your aims are. Because we're not clear about what our aims are, it's very difficult to ask us realistically for a strong response. So what's the best thing you can get if I were doing policy advice, which I wouldn't do? It would probably be what Magaliotti recommended. That's to say, the strongest way of responding to the Russians, apart from intercepting drones like that, is to support Ukraine more. And to do so in a tangible way that's about action rather than about making highfalutin pronouncements that the Moscow gang are not going to take seriously, because that's much of what the Europeans have been doing. They've been talking without acting. So the best you can do is do something singular and tangible for Ukraine that the Russians can see you wouldn't have done unless until they had the incursion into Poland. That's it for today. We're going to keep watching our world. Please don't freak out. We're not remotely on the precipice of World War III. And I'm here.